Well, hello everybody, this is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Critique of the Week for Friday, November 27th. It's the day after Thanksgiving here in the United States, and it's a perfect time to say thank you to everybody who participates in these every week and who participates in all the fun things that we do over live streaming video. It really makes it it's a lot more fun to do it when there's an audience here live with us every time. So thanks so much to you for being here and for participating in these critiques of the week, in the Poets Respond Live, and of course on the Rattlecast. It's always really, I love doing live stream video, and you guys make it all worthwhile. So thanks for being here and listening. Now, as always, the critique of the week is a chance to sit around and share our thoughts about poems to help people. So make sure I'm not getting I don't know if you heard an echo or not. I was thinking I was hearing an echo. But yeah, so it's a chance to sit around and learn from people's honest reactions to poems. And it's always a really nice thing to do. So let's do it. Hello to Mark Grinyard, James DeCillo over there on YouTube, Lisa Allison, nice to see you. Let's see. Turn this down. And at the end of the show, we will have, let me see here. Something seems a little wrong, but anyway, that's okay. I think as long as everybody can hear me, we're okay. Greetings to Deb Ewing too. Yeah, good to see you. Okay, and over on Facebook, on YouTube, we got Silly D, Richard Westheimer's here, E.H. Hampson. Yeah, thanks so much. I'm still trying to figure out, I can't hear myself in the microphone, but I think everybody else can hear me, so I think that's okay. Sounds good here, says Richard. Thanks. I was waiting for somebody to say it sounds good. Okay, so at the end of the show today, we'll do another drawing for the month of December's participants for the Critique of the Week. If you haven't done it yet, it's too late for this month, but not too late for January. I already have the list pulled up, and I will just pop it into the random list randomizer, I guess it's called, and then we'll take the first, how many weeks are in December? 4? Yeah, there's 4 Fridays in December. So we'll take the first 4 names that come out in the list randomizer at the end of the show today. But today, let's go to the poem. And of course, do turn your phone sideways. Click on full screen if you're on a desktop. Or if you have the bandwidth, click on the little gear wherever you're watching this and make sure it's turned up to HD so you can have the poems be as clear as possible as we want to read them here. Now, today's poet is Olivia Cotton. And she has these 2 poems here. One's pretty short, the other's a little longer, so we'll probably be able to get to them both. Back this up a little bit. Okay, so here's the first poem. It's the shorter of the 2. This is John 15:12. I sang at church while wearing his ring of purity. I prayed on my knees while holding his rosary. I recited his words, love each other as I have loved you. I loved and I loved, but I never read the fine print. It failed to transfer. Love each other as I have loved you, unless you love her. So a very short, concise poem here. And of course, John 5:12 is quoted, so we don't have to wonder what that is. It's this line, love each other as I have loved you. And so I like the way this poem moves really fast. I think this poem works well as a short, condensed poem here. I sang at church while wearing his ring of purity. So at first, I'm not sure, not being really all that familiar with purity rings, I'm not sure who gives you a purity ring. So there's an ambiguity here, which I liked. I think it worked out well, because eventually we know whose it is. And maybe everybody just knows. Is it supposed to always be, does anybody give a purity ring other than sort of Jesus? I'm not sure. But anyway, I sang at the church while wearing his ring of purity. I prayed on my knees while holding his rosary. So let me start to get to understand what it is. I recited his word, love each other as I have loved you. So now we definitely know that it's the word of God. I loved and I loved and I love this repetition. It's a very understated way to write this, but I loved and I loved contains so much. That's a great line in this poem. But I never read the fine print. Now, here's the only thing. There's 2 things. It's such a short poem. There's really not a whole lot to say about it. Read the fine print is a bit of a cliche. A lot of just read the fine print is something that you hear all the time. It failed to transfer is interesting though, because it has this rhyme at the end with the her. So I like the way the sounds of that played out. But read the fine print. I'm wondering if there's a way you could do this a little differently, just to avoid that read the fine print kind of. It's not just a cliched expression. It's also sort of a very familiar sort of just thought process, And you want to sort of steer away from the familiar too much in a poem, because then you don't excite the neurons of the reader as much if it's something they've seen before. So I'm not sure what to do, but I was wondering if maybe instead of fine print, maybe footnotes, and then make this an actual footnote at the bottom. Like leave a huge, leave the huge gap and put this all the way down here as a footnote. And then it would, and then then there's this like delay and there's this gap as you realize what the point of the poem was. And I think that makes it sort of hit a little harder maybe. If you keep it in fine print, if you don't mind about the, that's a bit of a cliche, then I wonder if making that actual fine print would be interesting too. So those are two ideas for this poem, but really I like it. It's a nice little condensed poem. Let's see what people are saying. So, James Asilla says that there's no fine print in the Bible. Yeah, that's the thing. There's no fine print. And what is there in the Bible? Like, you could say, isn't there a word for what, like scholars have said about the Bible? Isn't there a word for sort of like analysis of the Bible? So I never read the, not appendix. I don't know what. Isn't there a word? Is there a word I'm thinking of? But I never read the exegesis. I don't know. That's a little too fancy. Is that a biblical word? I'm not sure. If there's a word for some kind of like explanation of the Bible, like footnotes for the Bible, then maybe put that in there. But I like the idea of moving it way down and actually making it what you say. So make this a footnote that, and then put the conclusion as a footnote. That's what I think I would do. Other than that, I think this poem just really, works really well. One thing I wanted to mention too is I try to steer clear, and we do in Rattle, of bold and underlined for two reasons. So what bold and underlining is really doing is emphasis. So it's doing the same function as the italics for unless. So just saying emphasize this. So unless you love her. And it's really doing the same thing, but with a different typography. The problem with bold is that people who have difficulty with their vision have trouble seeing the difference, actually. So they could miss that out completely. And then the underline is hypertext now. And so if this were on like a website and you saw a bolded underlined word, you would assume that is a link, and you would be clicking with your mouse. And so that's why we try to avoid underlined and bold, because it's easy to miss the bold and it's easy to confuse the underline. So, and you don't want people to be getting confused about the typography, because really a poem is an expression. It's like the music of speech coming out of somebody's voice. And so all you really need is emphasis. So you could do the her. Sometimes we do the capitals, not underline it though. But sometimes you could do all caps maybe. But I would just put it italics. That's what I would do for that part. But of course I would be having it in the footnote as well. And then somebody else mentioned on the chat, which I kind of forgot about, but let's see. I don't know. Somebody said should his be capitalized? Because it's God, and we capitalize God as a convention. I actually wouldn't for this poem, because at first you don't really know what it's sort of, it reveals itself slowly for such a short poem. And if it was his, it would sort of take away that punch, if it was capitalized, I mean. So I would leave that lowercase probably, even though it's normally the convention not to. And it sounds like, this is a poem about struggling with faith and stuff. So that's a decision too that the speaker or author has made. And I think that works fine. So I would leave it alone. Let me see if there are other comments on this. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this poem. It's a very condensed, tight little poem, and I don't know, it expresses itself really well for the size. Lisa Ellison suggests, but I never knew the genesis. It failed to transfer. That's interesting. Mary Ellen Carr says putting it at the bottom seems gimmicky. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing you have to worry about with doing something like using footnotes in a poem. It does feel gimmicky. And you have to weigh what you gain versus what you lose for doing that. It's a poem that, the message is a pretty common message. It's not something that's very surprising to see as an overall what the poem is about kind of question. And so the thing that makes it interesting is how concise it is, and this idea of having, the end, not having read the fine print is what's interesting about it too. So highlighting that, I think it would work like that, but it's, it's always up to the author. Let's see. Oh, and for the Genesis idea, it's Lisa Ellison says the first book of the Bible is Genesis, of course, and it rhymes with unless. So that keeps a rhyme here if you use that, the unless in Genesis. Let's see. Never read the cross reference is Aaron Cloyd's suggestion. I think the word that we're looking for is even, it's not really even the fine print or the footnotes, right? We're looking for the meaning behind the words, like what's left unsaid. So I'm not sure. Let me keep looking at the comments here. Oh, so Debbie Wing suggests maybe there should have been fine print or there should have been footnotes. That would kind of clear it up a little bit better because there's not actually fine print or footnotes. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's all we have. Let me look over at YouTube really quick. So Richard Westheimer says failed to transfer is weak. And maybe that's a good spot. That's a good point, Richard. Yeah. So failed to transfer. A few people mentioned this. It's sort of a technical term. It doesn't have a lot of punch to it. And it's sort of an opportunity here for a visual opportunity for an image. Like you can, I don't know, you could play a lot with what, like instead of transfer, if it was like download, and that's not a good example, but just different, because there aren't many images in this poem. There's the rosary here, there's the purity, so you kind of get these flashes of like a ring and a rosary and a hand, and then you don't get much more for images. And there's here to use an imagistic metaphor to make the poem a little more sticky. And that's a good place you could do something. So instead of transfer, you could use some kind of imagistic type metaphor to make that stronger and bolder. So great suggestion. That was Richard Westheimer with that comment. And that was a good one. That's a great place for adding a little bit more punch. Let's see. I think that's all we have to say. So Marianne Keller mentions too, which what I was getting at, that the lower case also hints that she has lost her religion due to rejection by the church. Yeah. And it does too. And you don't realize that until, you realize what the poem is actually saying. So that works too. But it would just ruin you know exactly what's going on too soon, too quickly. If it was the capital, I think just delaying that a little bit helps. Let's move on to the next poem because this is pretty short. And really the only thing here is if you want to play with this line and if you like the idea of making that an actual footnote. And I think should have had footnotes or something like that would be a little better maybe. Okay, let's read the other one. This is, I hate you out of love. I do this for you. I do this for God. I help you. This is out of love. I was taught to yearn for the prince of my dreams while they sat, a gorgeous princess, next to me. But the moment they saw my hand in hand with hers was the moment I questioned if there was a God. They diagnosed me ill while religiously pouring holy water onto us as if they can pray away what God made. We buried ourselves away, fearfully hiding, fearfully loving, punishing our instinctual way of natural love, made us believe we were wrong, taught us how to invalidate our identity with ease. I declare myself a liar. I deemed her a falsifier. They put ashes on our forehead, but could barely touch us with disgust. They purged the demons that we called our love. I bellow out, God hates me. He hates my love. Where is this God of love while you tear apart ours? They reply with a smile so high, I do this for you. I do this for God. I help you. This is out of love. So the first line and the last line here repeat. And that's a good structural element in this case, because I think at the beginning, I and probably most readers would assume that the I is the speaker, but it turns out that the I is actually the religious people, and the you is the speaker. So that shifts and you kind of realize what's going on, which is a good sort of structure. It's a good movement for a poem. Let's talk about the title first. I hate you out of love. It's a very simple words, but an interesting concept. So it sort of sets up the poem. But I wonder if it could even be a little more tighter if you just get rid of the pronouns and just hate out of love. Would that be a little better, maybe? Let's see. Now I do this for you. I do this for God. I help you. This is out of love. I like that as an opening. I taught to yearn for the prince of my dreams while they sat, a gorgeous princess next to me. Now the yearn feels like there could be a better verb. And the prince of my dreams, gorgeous princess next to me. I mean, that's setting it up. It's sort of working still. But the moment they saw my hand in her, my hand in hand with hers, was the moment I questioned if there was a God. So it gets very kind of wordy here. Like the storytelling isn't as succinct as anywhere else in the this poem or the other one, really. There's just a lot of sort of clutter in here. The moment I questioned if there was a God, I think you could stick to the images a little more. They saw my hand in hand with hers. I'm not sure how to redo that, but you don't need to explain as much and to go into much detail. And then it gets really even more wordy here. Let me extend this because this part too. They diagnosed me ill while religiously pouring holy water onto us as if they can pray away what God made. So the see how the image works here. They diagnosed me ill while religiously pouring holy water. And if it ended there, it would sort of be fine. But then it continues, one of us onto us, as if they can pray away what God made. And that's where it gets really wordy. And it sort of loses its poetic music in these two lines as it gets a little too long. Like this is a choppy, quick sort of style through the rest of the poem. And that gets more into prose. We buried ourselves away, fearfully hiding, fearfully loving. So we're getting really abstract. Publishing our instinctual way of natural love. And then here I tripped reading because everywhere else each fragment is sort of isolated and you expect a period. So even though there's no period here and it feels like it can stop, it actually reads into the next line, made us believe we were wrong. And so that tripped me up as I was reading just the way it's laid out. Taught us how to invalidate our identity with ease. Again, it's getting wordy here. So I declare myself a liar. I deemed her a falsifier. I think you could get rid of that and just, if you notice, I think the poem works best where it's really like punchy and quick. I declare myself a liar. I think that works. Her a falsifier. If you just got right to the point there, I think that would work better. They put ashes on our forehead, but could barely touch us with disgust. I think you leave that implied. Just end it there. And then I think you need a period. But, if they can barely touch us, we kind of understand why as readers. So have faith that we'll know what you mean, that it's with disgust. And that's just unnecessary. They purged the demons that we called our love. Again, maybe get rid of the R. I bellow out, God hates me, he hates my love. Where is the God of love? Well, you tear us apart. So again, we're getting very like wordy and prosic again in this section. They reply with a smile so high, I do this for you. So I love the ending. So the structure of this poem, I think, really works. But the rest feels kind of flat and unpoetic to me in a way where I think you do a lot more with it. And maybe part of it is like show us actual scenes and show us what's actually going on. Like this part with the holy water. Where was that? Pouring holy water. Like that can be a whole scene. And it, show it like you would in a film or something. I think that would make the poem a lot stronger. Let me see. So E.H. Hampson over on YouTube says, I think pray away what God made is strong, but ill, while, and religiously can be cut. Let's look at that little section. They diagnosed me. Yeah, so you could cut this for sure, and that makes it much less wordy. They diagnosed me pouring holy water onto us. I think you can get rid of, well, I guess you need the onto us now. As if they can pray away what God made. I think that does work better. That improves that line. Richard Westheimer says, I just pull out every adverb and see what concrete nouns could make that case. Yeah, that's the thing. We need more concrete nouns and just concrete things to hold on to in this poem, I think. We get a lot of abstraction and a lot of like chattiness. And that's not something that really sticks in your mind. Like when you walk away from the poem. Like one of the things we want from a poem is to stick with the reader long after it's done. And that's done really with images. Like we talk about this all the time, but concrete things or things that are tangible that we can sort of feel, like we can inhabit the world while we're reading the poem. And then we take that world with us is how a poem kind of works. And things that are abstract and wordy, unless they're like a really good monologue where you're sort of feeling the speaker as a character, there's just not a whole lot to take away with you. So you read a poem like this, and you kind of forgot what you read as soon as you put it down, which is the problem. So if you can focus on those concrete nouns of the story, the holy water, the ashes on our forehead, another good image there. Those images are what you can keep with you when you leave, because that's kind of how our minds work. Let's see. Let me go back to Facebook and see, because I haven't been looking here very long. Let's see. Deb Ewing says, I like the personal connection in the title. Also, serve the prince is what we're taught. Serve the prince, yeah. That'd be a better verb there. The yearn is a little too melodramatic. T.R. Paulson loves the line about the ash on the forehead. Yeah, that's a good line. Like these little images are what stick. And so you sort of want to tell the story through little images. Sean Hines says, I absolutely love the idea of this poem. Definitely has potential. James Casillo, how about wash away what God has made? I like that too. Wash away what God has made. For this part. Yeah, that's a good line. I would like that. Pouring holy water as if to wash away what God has made. That'd be good. Deb Ewing says, I actually don't think the rhyme of liar and falsifier works here. It's a good point too. It's not a poem that's a sort of rhyme-based poem. It's a sort of a punch-based poem. Like these little images and statements are sort of what move the poem along. It's not rhyme. And so when there is a rhyme, it feels a little out of place, unless you do more of it. So let's see. So Sharon Friday says, yes, wordy, but a powerful, honest poem that could be more poetic. Yeah, I think that's sort of the gist of this one. Let's see. And Aaron Cloyd says, ashes on our foreheads burn their fingers. As a suggestion. Yeah, that would make it much more imagistic. Our forehead, but could barely touch us. I don't know. So that's the sort of gist of this poem. Is this is an honest poem and a powerful story, which could be turned up poetically, so it sticks and stays with readers a little more. Mark A. Grenier says, the Catholic imagery is great here for those of us who are familiar with it. It might not work well for others. Working more swiftly through it would help, avoiding some of the they dids and such. Yeah, I think, Mark raises kind of a point here that the Catholic imagery is great here for those of us who are familiar with it. And I think actually turning that up as high as possible. Don't worry about who's familiar with what in a poem. Like, the richness in a poem comes from stuff that we don't really maybe know, or it can resonate in ways that we don't quite understand. So anytime you can get some Catholic imagery into this poem and show through that kind of thing, like more, get more of that. I mean, the rosary in the other poem is one thing that's sort of everybody knows about. But if you can get stuff that people don't know about, that's even better. So don't shy away. Don't aim for the universal, because everything is always, the power of things is in the specific and in the detail, not in universality, because we don't connect with it as much. It's sort of counterintuitive, but that's the way it works. Never aim for sort of a universal audience. It's fine to leave people sort of hanging and reaching for their Wikipedia or something. I think there's nothing wrong with that. And that's how you end up with a poem. Because the thing is, if there's something we don't know, what the detail really means, but the poem is really rich and we're engaged with it, we just go and we accept that as something that's important. And then it can work on us in interesting, different ways. So always keep with the imagery. But yeah, Mark Grenier says the ashes and the holy water are right out of the Tertians. But yeah, but put as much specific stuff, even if it's only like a certain like sect of religion, like one church does something strange. If it's a specific detail, like, don't hesitate to use it, because that's what really makes us connect with stuff. Is stuff that's unusual and that's specific and concrete, like Richard Westheimer was saying earlier. Let's see. Yeah, and Richard Westheimer just said some kind of could use some slant images too, unexpected and surprising connections. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah, like things you wouldn't expect, like imagery that's a little unusual, adds to the effect. Yeah. So anyway, okay, so we did those two. With this one, I think the structure of this is really good, and just fill it out with details and make it more punchy and stuff. And this one is mostly ready. I just figure out what to do with this line, and possibly, if you want, make this section an actual footnote, which would be an interesting thing to play with at least. Okay, so those two good, interesting poems. Thanks to Olivia Cotton for sharing those. And let's do the drawing now for December's critiques. We had 45 people who entered via Submittable, which is the only way to do it now. And let me make sure I get everybody. And I'm going to go over to random.org on the screen view. Put this up there, this really cool list randomizer. I'm just going to paste all those names into this list. There's James Cicillo, who we saw. And we will click randomize. And Carlton Johnson's number one. Carlton Johnson's here a lot. It would be nice to see him on a critique. Then we have Ima Qureshi, Don Hamaliuk, and Sharman Rahman will be the next four poets to go. So thanks so much for sharing. As always, when you submit through Submittable for this drawing every month, you include 2 poems then. But if you want to swap them out before actually do it, just make sure you do that by the night before. And you can just use the messaging system on Submittable to swap in new poems if you've written new or you've revised it since you submitted. As long as you have an open submission that hasn't been accepted yet in this category, the Critique of the Week category on Submittable, as long as you have an open submission there, you'll be in the drawing every month. So there's no need to do it twice. I'm only pulling people's names out and not the number of submissions, so only submit once. And that's about all there is to it. And also don't submit, I guess, if you have gone in the last year, let's say. So I should probably put that as a note on the submission. But if somebody came up who we've done in the last year, I would cross them off the list, I think, because we want to give everybody a chance. Anyway, that was the Critique of the Week today. Hope you enjoyed it. Now, as always, the Poetry Spawn Live will be coming up on Sunday. Poetry Spawn Live is our open mic show for poems about current events. So we always try to have, if possible, if they're available, the poet that we publish on Sunday, we'll have them on the line. Then we'll have an open mic for everybody who would like to share what they've written this week. And then I'll end up with a personal haiku I like to write at the end of every show. That'll be Sunday, noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific, right when I wake up. And then after that, this week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Jim Peterson. Just a beautiful poet, a beautiful soul. It's going to be an honor and a lot of fun talking to him. That's Tuesday, December 1st at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. His newest book, The Horse Who Bears Me Away, is out from Red Hen Press. It just came out this fall. And he has a poem in the current issue of Rattle, which that's the background there. Everybody can see. If you're always wondering, I use the background of the last issue somebody was in for these slides for the shows. But the new issue is out. If you haven't gotten it yet, it should be arriving soon, any day. That the mail at our nonprofit rate is very inconsistent. So if you haven't gotten it yet, don't worry, it's on the way. It just depends on how much room the postal worker has in the back of his truck, basically. Anyway, that is the show for today. Thanks to everybody who participated, and looking forward to look at the next set of poems by these four poets here. So thanks, and have a great rest of your weekend. Goodbye.